Welcome everyone to the Manage Self-Lead Others podcast. My name is Nina Sunday, and our goal is to upskill and have interesting discussions for experienced and aspiring managers. And today, my guest is Nils Vesk. Nils is the author of Innovation Archetype, which is all about democratizing innovation. I've seen him speak many times. I follow his posts on social media. I consider him one of the big thinkers in this country. Nils has a background in design, which means that he brings to all of his authorship and all of his presentations and his membership site, he brings design thinking, he brings futurism, and he brings innovation. So welcome, Nils. It's a true honor to have you on the podcast.
Gosh, thank you for having us, Nina. And with an introduction like that, I think I should be sitting down listening to myself. But very kind with the words. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. Well, we've been having a chat prior to today about the nature of innovation and the challenges that managers have on two sides of the coin. Like, managers can be so busy and so pushed for results that where do they get time for innovation? At the same time, they may want to innovate, but the culture doesn't support that. So how important is it for managers to encourage innovation within their teams?
I think you've almost got to, I'm not trying to sidestep the question, but I feel like you've almost got to ask a bigger question. And that is, why does the organization want to innovate? Because if the organization or the team doesn't have the value for innovation, that they don't see the value that innovation can bring, then it's sort of, why should we be going out there to innovate? But so if I was to answer that rhetorical question, I would probably say that the reason why innovation is so important, and subsequently why managers or leaders should be encouraging their teams to innovate, is that innovation can make a massive difference. Innovation can be on process, innovation can be in customer service, and innovation can be on product. Now, I think traditionally most people think innovation, it's just about product. So, only the R&D people can do that, or only the marketing people can do that, and everyone else gets left behind. And that's an absolute furphy. And the reality is, when you look at how some organizations are evaluated for the innovation, more often than not, it actually comes down to how innovative their business model is, which then relates to the processes they have in place. And the product is it is a byproduct of the innovative processes they've got in place. So that's one of the reasons why innovation is so important. The second reason is that it actually is a great relief from the concept of boredom. I mean, believe it or not, no matter how cool our organization might be, we get caught up in, day-to-day sort of dross, and innovation is giving people an outlet, an opportunity to look for new ideas that can be exciting. It can bring in a whole new lease of life and an energy that wasn't there before. So they're just some of the reasons that innovation is important, and why a leader or a manager, I think, should be encouraging it.
Well, I heard a couple of things that you mentioned there, Nils. The last thing was really about staff retention, retaining good people, because I can remember before I had my own business, I was an employee, and I remember they didn't want any of my creative ideas, so I left. It's like they lost a good person. Is that a common thing that happens? The best people leave because innovation isn't happening and their talent isn't being used?
Yeah, definitely. I see it all the time. And usually where these people end up is they create a little startup, and, they end up
Become a
selling back. That's it. Or they end up selling their business back to the company that sort of didn't listen to their ideas for a massive amount. And kudos to them for taking the effort and making that effort to do it. But yeah, if we had actually simply created some structure and some space and the right culture to listen to those ideas, to listen to our people and give them that support, then we wouldn't need to do that. We wouldn't be losing people by all means.
And the other thing you mentioned in there was just a passing comment about when an organization is being evaluated. Was that the word you used? Who's
Yeah.
evaluating an organization and making innovation one of the attributes?
Well, so, I mean, we only need to look at like a Forbes or any of those sort of major magazines when they will do who are the most innovative company in the world. And, these are always a little bit subjective, but the best ones out there will look across three different areas. They will look across process, they will look around product, and they will look around service. And you're finding that there are a lot more companies that traditionally people go, what, but they don't really have a product. But they've got a service or they've got an amazing process. And I think that the tide has changed, even though, R&D labs, been around for a long time. And we all know that business models and processes can all be innovated. But it's good to see that people external to, how would you say, the media will start to realize that an innovative company doesn't have to have a whiz-bang product. It could be what's happening internally. And I think that's also then being reflected in, if you look at valuation of a company. So if I was a venture capitalist or I was looking at purchasing a company doing a mergers and acquisition, when we look at the sort of calculation, what they do is the valuation is a multiple of the EBIT, the earnings before income tax. And the higher that multiple is, the more valued the company is. And what determines the value, one of those things, believe it or not, is process, the quality of the processes. So if you can innovate around your process, then that's automatically going to increase the valuation or the multiple of your EBIT. So that's just one of the reasons when we're looking at valuation, process shouldn't be a boring word, actually should be an innovative word. And it's probably one of the, I would say, like one of the areas where we really have opportunity to innovate above our competitors.
And this is where managers, it doesn't really have to fall on their shoulders, does it? They can delegate innovation or innovation tasks to the team. And I'm thinking along the lines of continuously automating standardized processes. I've heard people say, look, if I have to do the same process over and over and it takes more than 30 seconds, I find a way to automate it. Do you find that companies are not innovating enough in automating processes that occur on a regular basis? They keep doing the
Yeah, I think,
same old.
yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, unfortunately, by human nature, we are creatures of habit and seekers of comfort. And it makes psychological sense to just do the same thing because we're comfortable with it. And there's that push pull of, when do we push our people to go beyond our comfort levels to do something different? And not everyone likes to, there are a lot of people that will switch off and are happy to do the same thing every day. But I think, as you said, that is one of the biggest areas where people can innovate. And people will use different languages for it. So let's say, for example, let's say if someone's just got an Excel sheet going and they've created a shortcut, that's an innovation, that's a process innovation. And you'd be surprised how many of those little shortcuts and workarounds, or whatever you want to call them, are happening that aren't recognized. And yet if they were recognized, I think it would inspire a lot more people to look for those things to do. And a simple language that I use around this is bottlenecks. And that just makes so much more sense to people. It doesn't freak them out by saying, oh, we need to innovate. I say, so what are your biggest bottlenecks? And they say, what do you mean? Well, where are your biggest pain points? Where are your customer pain points? Where are your frustrations? Where are the biggest mistakes happening? What's taking up more time than anything else? And by using that as a metaphor, and simply put, it's slowing things down, and then go, well, how do we alleviate this bottleneck? How do we get rid of it? You've got a focus area to innovate, which is really important because a lot of companies will say, we want to innovate, but what does that actually mean? Do you want to improve processes, the customer service? Do you want to improve how it works for internal people and the sort?
The title of your book, Innovation Archetypes, suggests characters and stories. And I believe one of the themes in your work is the use of stories to drive behavioral change. Can you talk to that?
This episode is brought to you by Global X. Since 2008, Global X ETFs has been committed to empowering investors with unexplored, intelligent solutions. Global X specializes in exchange-traded funds that offer exposure to the artificial intelligence ecosystem, including themes like data centers, robotics, semiconductors, and cloud computing. To learn more about Global X's entire suite of ETFs, from covered calls, fixed income, emerging markets, and more, visit globalxetfs.com.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to go out and interview pretty much every kind of behavioralist that are out there, so that whether it's a psychologist, a counselor, whether it's an ethnographer, whether it's a anthropologist, sociologist, they would probably all agree that a story is one of the strongest tools that we have to create behavioral change. And by that, because when we think about how our human brain is wired, is we are wired for story. It's just something that has been passed down from generation to generation, and when we think one of the biggest industries in the world is the entertainment industry. Why? Because there are stories, and there is a change in our mental state and emotional state that we do. And the amount of research that's coming from the world of neuropsychology and neuroscience of the power of emotion has really backed up this fact that stories move us. And so if we're to look at how can we tap into story to change behavior for our team, well, we can think about it this way. We could say, well, if, let's say, I wanted a team to become more innovative. Now, first thing I need to do is define what type of innovation that we want. So I want to be very specific, because if we're vague, it doesn't mean anything. So I could go, well, if I could identify what I think is an observable, measurable innovation behavior, then we can talk about it, or I can tell a story about it. So I might go, oh, look, I noticed that Nina the other day, when she is doing a project planning meeting, she invites two people from outside of the immediate team to share what their thoughts might be from an external perspective. Now, that is a observable, measurable, specific behavior. And quite often what happens with innovation, we get caught up in using traits rather than specific behaviors. So a trait is, oh, we need to be more collaborative. Now, you can't actually measure collaboration, but when you specifically say, do our team members invite people at the start of our project meeting to come and give external perspective? Yes, I can measure it, I can see it, and I can tell a story about it. So I could say, hey guys, so just one of the things that we found when we were working at our last organization was that when we invited people from other external departments, we found that we often had a fresh perspective on how to overcome some of the obstacles. So blah, 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 and you could do the same about specifically when a mistake happens or something goes wrong, talk about a process and how you overcome it. And, we could spend a whole week talking about storytelling. I'm not an expert on it, but the concept, I'm sure we're all familiar with the concept of the hero's journey, an idea that was proposed by the Joseph Campbell, that's right, the comparative religion expert from California. And for those who don't know, Star Wars and George Lucas went to him for advice around Star Wars and the characterization of Chewbacca and stuff like that. Anyway, but yeah, people we want them to get across the river and to the goal, but that would be too easy. So there's always some obstacle, and we want to see them, learn and go through that type of stuff. So sharing a hero's journey doesn't always have to be a major failure, but overcoming something and sharing that's our narrative. Because when we think about it, I've got a narrative of what innovation means to me. Now, it is usually completely different to everyone else, because I'm sold by it, I live it and breathe it. And so what we've got is, when we're working in a team or an organization, we've got to go, how do we change the narrative of each individual? So we need to say, our narrative that we keep repeating in different formats, different versions of stories, is that this is the type of innovation that we're looking for. Yeah, a long answer. Hopefully that makes sense.
Oh, that's fascinating, Nils. And you talk about the aspect of making mistakes, and of course, if you're innovating, you are going to fail and you are going to make mistakes. And one of the very early books that I read early in my business career was the very first version of Michael Gerber's The E-Myth. And he very much stated the principle that if a process is occurring and someone is following a process and they make an error, it's not their fault. It's usually the process doesn't have a check and balance, because good people will sometimes make up for the fact that there is no check and balance, but you can't blame someone else who doesn't know, oh, you need to check that, if it's not actually written in the process. So do you find that blaming people for errors is counterproductive? And how can a manager sort of get over the habit of doing that if that's what they do?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, no one likes being told that they're dumb or they're wrong or they've done something. And apart from maybe some disreputable councils where people will go out of their way to make something fail, no one goes to work with the intention of making something fail. Everyone is they're doing their best with the best skills and the abilities that they have. And yep, so what we need to do is to be able to get clear about identifying that if something wasn't working, it was the process that wasn't working properly. And if the process wasn't working, then we've got to fix it. So how do you change a habit for that? One of them is to use a bit of a process around mistakes and identifying mistakes. I'm just trying to sort of think about it. But when you think about what type of mistakes actually are out there, I'm just going to kind of jog something from my memory if I can. But really, there are three types of mistakes that happen. One is a real mistake. That is when the wrong process is executed. The next one is a blackout, which is when part of the process is forgotten. And the third one is a slip up. And that is when the right process is executed incorrectly. So say, for example, a real mistake is I've just got a new client that's come on board. I'm supposed to be, help onboarding them. And I, rather than use the onboard process, I go straight to the accounting process and send them an invoice. That's a real mistake that's gone on. Blackout might be I'm doing some invoicing and I forget to attach the PDF of the invoice, or the accounts payable team forget to that. Yeah, that's a blackout. A slip up is I might, let's come back to onboarding. I send them the invoice first rather than the welcome kit first. And so they go, oh God, what's this? I'm getting an invoice straight away. And so by understanding that, we can start to identify, what those processes are. And there's a number of different, contributing factors or sources of mistakes. So one is rule-based. So do people know what they're supposed to do? The other is knowledge-based, is that do people know what to do? And then the third level is skill-based. So do people actually have the skill to do that? So that can help a leader or a manager quickly as well, because they go, actually, well, do they know what they're supposed to do? Do we know what's supposed to do, or is it just inferred? Have they been trained up on it? Do they have the skills to do it? And so starting to use some of that type of work. And I think James Reason is a name that comes to my mind. I think he was a organizational psychologist who's worked a lot in the world of aviation. Why do we have these horror plane accidents? And I think a lot of his thinking kind of relates to, some of those concepts around that type of stuff there.
James Reason is always looking for the reason for the thing.
That's it. Yeah, that's a good one.
Now, you've got this new book coming up in a couple of months called The Reinvention Sprint. Can you tell us about what's that about?
Yeah, so the Reinvention Sprint was a book I wrote last year for those who are just joining us in the COVID times. And I realized that a lot of organizations were stuck and set in their way of how they would do business, and they were really stumped as to what to do. And so I started getting a lot of calls from different clients, saying, can you help us do this? And as I was fielding and helping out these clients, I thought, wow, there's got to be a better way to help them reinvent their product or their process or their service offering quickly, but most importantly, do it with as minimal risk as possible. I'm sure we're all familiar. One of the biggest aversions that we have to any innovation is about risk. And one of the big things I'm always working with clients is, how do we minimize that risk? And how can we test this for $100 rather than spending $100,000 or 100,000 hours of our team to try and go somewhere that we find it is a dead end. So yeah, essentially it helps them go through a journey of reinventing their either a product, a process, or a service, or just one of those components.
That's fantastic. And how can managers work with you on an ongoing basis? I think you've got some sort of membership site.
Yeah, so one of the things that we launched just last year that's going gangbusters at the moment is a site called The Reinvention Club, and thereinventionclub.com. And on this site, what we do is we help leaders and managers who are aspiring to lift their level and knowledge of innovation. So how can they lead innovation? How could they facilitate a particular innovation exercise? How could they generate insights? How could they generate ideas? How could they validate or prototype? And how do they pitch their ideas? Because we all know that often people have great ideas, but then people seem to suck at being able to communicate it and they get left by the wayside. So it's really a platform that each and every week people get sent some content. It might be a cheat sheet, it might be a flow chart. They all come with videos, bite-sized, but they really enable people to lift their skills as an innovator without having to spend, $100,000 and going and doing an MBA or whatever it might be, because this is specifically around innovation.
That sounds fascinating. And what's one of the mistakes that someone might make when they are doing a pitch? Is it around language and not really finessing how they present their argument?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I mean, there can be a few different things. It's not around presentation skills. While both of us as professional speakers know that the value of speaking professionally, so please by all means, make sure you keep up your training and look at ways to improve your performance and communication skills. But usually what causes people to drop the ball when they've got a good idea is not understanding, being able to put themselves in the shoes of the team that they're communicating to. So whether that's a board or a CEO or some senior executives, what generally tends to happen is that people don't see the value in an idea. And there's one of the things that when we come up with an idea, we get excited by it, which is great, but that doesn't always, wash off into an effective pitch. So I often talk about 3 different ways that you can assess your idea, and then you can communicate your idea. So if you can pre-screen either your insight or your idea before you pitch it, then it will make it much more easier for people to understand. So let me take a step to the side and talk about an insight. So an insight is a word commonly used but seldom understood. So this is kind of the compelling reason why should we actually be even creating an idea to solve this problem. So I spoke about earlier on about the concept of bottlenecks, a pain point, a frustration point. So a commercial insight is either a frustration, a desire, an aversion, or an emerging trend that up until now no one's been able to capitalize on. So if we can go, ooh, here's an insight, and then we can think about it in 3 different areas. We could say, how workable is this insight? By that we go, has anyone else in the industry touched this insight, or is this something completely brand new? So how unmet is it? If it isn't, if it hasn't been touched before, then that's a really good opportunity. Willingness. That is this a real problem that the market or our organization wants solved? Because if no one wants it solved, why should we bother doing it? Sometimes we come up with, everyone wants this solved. I don't really care. It doesn't really bother me. It's a little inconvenience, but I'm not, And then finally, winnable is, can we address this problem faster than our competition? So I usually will get people to score their insight or, the problem or the pain point or bottleneck, whatever it is you want to call it, on a scale of 10 for each of those. So you've got out of 30, and that really helps. So then when you can pitch, why do we want to come up with a solution for here? Here's why. It's an insight that is winnable, it's workable, and the market are willing, or our team or our organization is willing to have it. Then when you've done that, you can then start to think about the idea itself. And again, I like to use 3 criteria. So how tactical is it? Technical, how difficult or easy it is. And then finally, financial, what is the financial return of investment? So tactically, does this solve a problem that our organization wants or needs solved? So does it relate to the bigger picture? Because, if we're in the world of inventing toasters and these other people want us to, come up with a microwave oven, and tactically the organization just wants to focus on that area. That's probably not going to work for us. Technical is we want to think about how good are our technical skills to be able to solve this problem. How many unknowns are there? If there's 100 unknowns and we're going, whoa, then maybe that's not going to be a great score for it. And then finally, how deep are the market's pockets, so financial, and what could be the rewards that we can gain from that. And again, so I score out of 10 for each of those. So that way it helps to take away the emotional biases that we all have. And you can pitch an idea and say, look, let me explain why this is an idea. Tactically, it's this. Technically, it's that. Financially, it's that. And I've never seen anyone reject an idea when someone has used that properly. If it's scoring 0, 2, and 1, then they know that it's self-screening as well. It goes, actually, maybe that isn't a good idea for me to go to. So it both levels yourself, stops you from looking from a fool, and it justifies why this is a compelling idea and a commercial business case.
Yes, Nils, one of your strengths is your ability to analyze what we at one level, what we take, like the 3 types of mistakes, the 4 types of you have this ability to kind of create attributes that drill down and make distinctions about things that really helps crystallize people's thinking. So that's sounds very, very useful.
Oh, good.
Pre-COVID, I think you had quite a presence in the United States as well as Australia. I don't know, we're sort of a bit bound, can't travel overseas, but are you able to sort of deliver globally virtually or?
Yeah. So I was doing, it was an awkward time, but I think I was doing a whole series around 2 a.m. for the East Coast of the USA, usually because they were lunchtime sessions. But I've definitely been doing still a lot of global work. Just last week, actually, it was an easier one. It was just across the ditch with New Zealand. Was doing some work with there. And I'm sure, just like yourself there, Nina, I think the best thing, and this sounds horrible, not trying to diminish the hurt felt by hundreds and thousands of people around the world, but from a work perspective, one of the best things that has come out of this, we've all known about remote working and the concept of it for years. We're talking this technology stuff has been around for 10, 15 years, and yet, no, we don't need it. And now this whole paradigm shift has given people a new opportunity, people that don't have to commute for 1 hour to get to work and another hour to get home, that we can actually get stuck into things. And maybe we don't need to go to every meeting because, that we were probably just there for the chat and the catch up, which there is obviously great value. So the interesting thing about the rebound, as we kind of, at least Australia, we're a bit lucky, we're kind of coming out of it a lot faster than other places, is this ability for us to look at new business or working models, new workplace models where we can have virtual hot desk spaces. And I think where we're heading is a space where people will be doing more, let's call them inspirational culture building sessions at work, and using remote co-share workspaces to do their work if they don't want to work from home, and it's reducing the cost. There's a lot of environmental benefits and social benefits as well. So it's interesting to see where this goes if we were to do this chat in 5 years' time.
Exactly. I mean, the cross-pollination, now that we can work globally, and speakers in Australia are certainly doing shift work and working in the middle of the night to reach out to the rest of the world. It just means that everybody's able to take advantage of anyone on the planet at any agreed time. So that is one of the silver linings of the COVID experience. So we look forward to this rebound that is coming. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Look, it's been totally fascinating speaking with you, Nils, and I suppose we could go for another half hour, but it's been a pleasure having you as a guest on the podcast. And in the show notes, there'll be links to your to contact you. So thank you very much for answering my questions today and being available.
It's an absolute pleasure. And thanks for all of the listeners for beaming in. And thank you, Nina, for inviting us. And I'll see you guys later.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.